I didn't know exactly how I made the stroke, but I knew it was a drive and that I could do it again. I just love the feel of hitting the ball hard.
It was the 1920s, and feminism was only a whisper of a word. Women barely had the right to vote. No one expected their influence to expand beyond that. But on the tennis court, Helen Wills was just beginning to show what's possible. And in the process, she made society rethink almost everything.
Helen Wills Moody was a feminist before feminism was invented. By playing a sport that was mostly for men.
Sports was seen as a kind of taboo. Femininity meant passivity. You weren't supposed to succeed. But Helen Wills had a whole different idea.
To play 22 major events, win 19 of them, there's never been anything quite like that.
The first signs of what would be appeared at the Berkeley Tennis Club in Northern California when Helen was just 14. At the time, it was one of the most prestigious courts in the country with the biggest name players as members.
In her day, it was mostly men who would give her significant matches. Helen had incredible power.
Playing against their faster balls and quicker court covering, my game rapidly developed.
Before long, Helen found herself on the other side of the court from Hazel Hotchkiss Whiteman, four-time U.S. national champion and a legend of the game.
She was absorbing every word she heard, how she should go about developing her game and who she should practice against.
It was really a training block with Hazel Whiteman.
All the matches were uphill struggles. But the local sports writers said that my game held a great deal of promise.
But a kid facing one of the great players of the time. Nervous? Of course she was.
But that didn't stop her. 3 years after joining the Berkeley Tennis Club, Helen won her first major, and America couldn't get enough of her.
She emerged as this teen phenom. People were captivated. She wore tennis dresses that only went down to her calf. She wore a visor, which gave her a mystery.
She was Chris Evert before Chris Evert was born. She did not show you anything. You didn't know she was winning or losing when she was playing the match.
She had this kind of strong disposition, unruffled, nothing could shake her. That's why they called her Little Miss Poker Face.
It was thought rather mysterious by some that anyone should be so quiet and lacking an outward appearance of excitement. When I play, I become entirely absorbed in the game.
It was a whirlwind time for Helen. She was just entering college with dreams of being an artist, but she had also won 2 Olympic gold medals and played in the match of the century against a French living legend.
Suzanne Langlois, Europe's Queen of the Net, the 6-time Wimbledon conqueror. It's Cannes, France, 1926, and she'll meet America's Queen of the Courts, Helen Wills.
Suzanne Langlois was easily the most important female athlete of her time. But now to have this emerging rival coming over from the United States, had Suzanne finally met her match?
Every news service had a representative in Cannes. The stands were crowded, and there were people on the roofs of the houses where the tiles had been partly removed.
There was no moment really quite like this in the history of women's tennis. This is when the game really came of age.
The match pitted Suzanne's signature balletic grace against Helen's pure power.
Little Poker Face bats back a long smash.
Late in the second set, it appeared the match was over. The players actually had gone up and shaken hands. The linesman raced up to the umpire to explain the shot that Wills had hit was good. Suzanne was on pins and needles. They carried on, and Helen brought the score back to 6-all. I think it just reaffirmed for everybody where she was headed.
I realized that there has never been a match that I enjoyed as much, in spite of defeat. I learned things that I remembered for the rest of my tennis days.
It was the only singles match the two would ever play against one another. Suzanne turned pro, and Helen would become the one to beat at the majors. In 1927, Helen began a winning streak of 158 matches without dropping a single set.
This is a record for the ages, a kind of Mount Everest peak that Helen stands on and I think will never be reached again.
Invitations from the in-crowd came pouring in. Well-known artists, actors, even royalty all wanted to be around Helen.
She became friends with the likes of Charlie Chaplin, the painter Diego Rivera. This became more commonplace in her life.
She was the first great woman superstar in an era of celebrities.
Mrs. Moody wins the final of the ladies' championship. I wonder if anybody will ever beat that woman. She's the most magnificent player I've ever seen.
But it soon became clear that Helen no longer had any true competition. She was simply too good. And so for the first time, the public began turning against her.
In sports, ultimately, you want to root for the underdog. And Helen almost put an end to competition. So fans naturally wanted a fresh face, and Helen understandably resented that.
By 1933, the campaign to defeat Helen was in full swing. Phil Neer, the 8th-ranked U.S. male player at the time, even made an attempt.
When you become number one, everybody wants to beat you. That's how you deal with it that makes a difference.
I had one thought, and that was to put the ball over the net.
It was incredible that she did beat Phil Neer in a match, but it largely went under the radar. Nothing in compared to all the hoopla with Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King.
Next, Helen faced the 2-seed, Dorothy Round, in the final at Wimbledon.
The spectators are tense with excitement.
There were about 16,000 in the crowd.
Mrs. Moody is fighting harder than at any time in the championships, and she just retains control of the match.
Helen won, but the match was considered an upset. Dorothy Round took a set.
Miss Round is the only player to have taken a set off the great Helen since 1927. All good things come to an end.
But anything can happen.
Helen Wills had been gone through nearly 7 years of not losing a match. It was one of the great dominant streaks in the history of women's sports, not just women's tennis.
Enter Helen Jacobs. The two had long been pitted against one another as rivals. They grew up in the same town, even attended the same college.
There was an incredible connection between the two. But Helen Wills just dominated. It was like the rivalry between a hammer and a nail.
But on a mild day in August, at the finals of the U.S. Nationals, things shifted. With an injured back, Helen was struggling. She was forced to default in the third set, and her streak was over.
No word or explanation on my part would help.
It created quite a stir. Would she ever play again? There was this sense of uncertainty.
Boarding a liner for Britain, many-time champion Helen Wills Moody tackles the long, hard comeback road after 2 years in retirement.
I must go, I thought suddenly, no matter whether I got anywhere in the tournament or not.
Once again, the courts at Wimbledon, where the great Helen won 6 British titles, may find her in action.
She made it through the early rounds, only to find herself, once again, facing Helen Jacobs in the finals.
The atmosphere is charged with excitement as the two great American rivals begin their mighty struggle for the title.
Helen Jacobs, she was at the very peak of her powers, while Helen Wills was slightly declining. Jacobs led 5-2 in the final set and had a match point on the verge of winning Wimbledon.
Then in one of the most thrilling duels ever seen on this court, Miss Jacobs loses her opportunity.
During the last couple of games, my wind had returned. I felt that here was a prize for all the games I'd ever played.
In an amazing recovery, Helen Wills Moody wins the championship. It's her 7th capture of the title.
Helen Wills was able to escape and win that match 7-5 in the third. There was never a comeback quite like that one for her.
3 years later, Helen would play Wimbledon one last time and win her 8th title. 53 years would pass before Martina Navratilova would break that record.
I just wanted to be part of the legend of tennis.
Helen Wills Moody advanced the game incredibly. Almost out of nowhere, she turned it to a must-watch situation. She proved you could succeed on your own terms. She was a pioneer.